Nolan Baker brings us up to date with what's happening with Manchester United and Dan Ashworth, and they've finally got this deal done. Yeah, and I think United will look at this appointment going into the transfer window with a clear plan, with a clear structure. You remember when the Glazers accepted the minority investment from Ineos, they handed Ineos control of the football operation. So could you say that that was an admission that they'd got things wrong in the past 10 or 15 years because they've handed somebody else who's come into the club all control of those football operations? There was effectively no structure, there was effectively no sporting director for a number of years. Now, what Manchester United have is a structure that includes Omar Barada as the Chief Executive Officer. He'll officially start his role in a couple of weeks. You've got Jason Wilcox as a technical director, and now you've got Dan Ashworth as a sporting director. And I think what you'll see is a more detailed and a more targeted approach to recruitment, simply because Manchester United don't want to be involved in long drawn-out transfer sagas as they have done in previous windows. If they have an idea of a price for a player, they will probably stick to that price and probably want the team and the club that they're buying from to reduce their asking price if a deal is going to go ahead. Otherwise, they will move to alternative targets. Now, those above Erik ten Hag, those people that I've mentioned will now work with Erik ten Hag, and it will be a team effort when it comes to who leaves the club, when it comes to who joins the club as well. Because it has appeared in the past that the manager has had quite a strong say, and almost to the point where the manager's been driving the recruitment. That won't be allowed to happen anymore. It will be driven by the recruitment team in conjunction with Erik ten Hag and United. With this structure in place, we'll hope that it will be more detailed, more targeted in both the short term, the medium term, and in the long term as well. Yeah, so you've talked about they're going to be ins, definitely going to be outs. Let's get to the specifics then. I mean, he's going to have his work cut out, hasn't he, from the outset? What's his interest starting at the back? It looks like a big priority, the central defensive position as far as Manchester United are concerned. There is a strong interest in the Everton defender Jarrad Branthwaite. We do know that. We do know that they made a £40 million bid which was rejected out of hand by Everton, and as I mentioned before with regard to their transfer approach. I think Manchester United will only go back in for Jarrad Branthwaite if they're getting indications from Everton they're going to bring down that asking price. But because Everton have made a couple of sales in this transfer window, Dobbin to Aston Villa and also Ben Godfrey has gone to Atalanta. It appears now that they're not under much pressure to reduce their asking price with regard to Branthwaite, hence why Manchester United are looking at other targets. Bayern Munich's Matthijs de Ligt is a target that Manchester United are looking at. They're looking into the conditions of a potential deal. No official approach to Bayern Munich yet, as far as we're aware, but we are expecting one for them to find out how much de Ligt would cost. So definitely one to look out for among other central defensive targets. Right, what about up front? I mean, they're going to want someone to help out Rasmus Højlund, won't they? Yeah, and the one we have been talking about is Joshua Zirkzee from Bologna throughout this transfer window. We do know that Manchester United will meet that release clause of around €40 million, which is around £34 million, and they've made it clear that they will do that. As it stands, talks are progressing between Manchester United and Ziyech's representatives over personal terms and all the rest of those contractual details, because sometimes it's the difficult part getting the fees sorted and the easier part is getting the personal terms sorted. This will probably work in reverse because we know that there's a release clause. United expected to meet that, and with that in mind, it's going to take a bit of work to try and sort out these personal terms. But once again, if that can't be achieved, they will move on to other targets. Okay, let's talk about other targets. Midfield. Because, I mean, that was a big problem last season. What are they looking at in that area? Yeah, one player we have been talking about in the last couple of weeks is the Paris Saint-Germain midfielder Manuel Ugarte. He's on Copa America duty just now with Uruguay. Discussions are at an early stage between United and PSG. They're just exploring the conditions of a potential deal before they decide to pursue a potential deal. And he's not the only midfielder that Manchester United are looking at. I know I'm saying that quite a lot here with regard to alternative targets, but it shouldn't be ever looked at. I think in the current Manchester United and the way they're trying to do business in that, there's a primary target, and if they can't get him, they'll move on to their second target. I think they're looking at 3 or 4 targets who they believe will fit the profile of the player that they want. And then if they can get the deal that they want. On the huge breaking news from Manchester United, Erik ten Hag has signed a 1-year contract extension as Manchester United manager. James Savondra is here going to be reacting to that, but let's tell you what ten Hag himself has said. I'm very pleased to have reached an agreement with the club to continue working together. Looking back at the past 2 years, we can reflect with pride on 2 trophies and many examples of progression from where we were when I joined. However, we must also be clear that there's still lots of hard work ahead to reach the level expected of Manchester United, which means challenging for English and European titles. In my discussions with the club, we have found complete unity in our vision for reaching those goals, and we are all strongly committed to making that journey together. New United sporting director Dan Ashworth said with 2 trophies in the past 2 seasons, Eric has reinforced his record as one of the most consistently successful coaches in European football. While the club's review of last season highlighted areas for improvement, it also reached a clear conclusion that Eric was the best partner for us to work with in driving up standards and outcomes. This group of players and staff have already shown they are capable of competing and winning at the top level. Now we need to do it more consistently with our strengthened football leadership team now in place. We're looking forward to working hand in hand with Eric to achieve our shared ambitions for this football club. Well, Ten Hag's first season at Old Trafford showed plenty of promise. He led the side to the EFL Cup, beating Newcastle in the final. United also reached the FA Cup final, losing to the treble winners Manchester City, and United finished third in the Premier League, qualifying for the Champions League. This season, however, it has been a bit of a struggle. United finished 8th in the league, their lowest finish during the Premier League era. They also suffered the most defeats, 14 in total, and also their worst goal difference in a Premier League season, -1. And United finished bottom of their Champions League group behind Copenhagen and also Galatasaray. They did win the FA Cup, beating Manchester City 2-1 in the final. And they've spent big, haven't they, on the Ten Hag, as 8 signings include 56.7 million on Lisandro Martinez, Casemiro from Real Madrid for 70 million, Antony costs 86 million, Mason Mount moved from Chelsea for 60 million, goalkeeper Andrea Onana signed for 47.2, striker Rasmus Højlund cost the club 72 million. In total, Ten Hag has spent 410.9 million. Here's the combined Premier League table since Ten Hag's appointment then. United sit 4th with 135 points across these 2 seasons, but a huge 45 points behind them. How were your nerves watching that quarter-final unfold last night? The penalties, I think, obviously the game itself, I wasn't that nervous. I actually thought we would equalize when Switzerland scored. It does feel like we're a team that need a jolt, and there's no doubt we stepped up a gear when Switzerland did put the ball in the back of our net, and we started to get bodies in the box. We started to take risks, and we got the goal back, and I just thought we would go on to win it in normal time. I think in extra time I was a little bit disappointed. I felt we let the game drift and didn't really grab the game by the scruff of the neck. It was almost as if both teams were accepting of the fact that we would play for penalties. But then when you saw the penalties being taken, maybe you could see why. I used to think that when I played for England and I got knocked out for England a few times in penalty shootouts that we were unlucky. But when I look at the preparation, the work that these lads have done, the quality of the penalties under extreme pressure, we now know it's an art form and the penalties were of really high quality, and that's where the real excitement in the game for fans watching YouTube. But for us as English fans, we're sort of damaged by past experiences. It's heartening and brilliant when we win that way because of the bad experiences we've had in the past, and that's where it was extremely nervy. I just feel nervy at that time on a personal level for the players that miss. I've seen some players miss, and some of those players in that squad have missed and received a lot of criticism. You've got one up on your screen there, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's had a couple of weeks that have been quite rough. Ivan Toney stepping up in his first tournament, and Cole Palmer, Jude Bellingham, no age whatsoever, he's so young. And then obviously Bukayo Saka, who was racially abused and abused in general just after the Euro 2020 tournament. So all those 5 lads, it meant something to them in different ways, and seeing Saka's smile after he took his penalty was a wonderful moment. Hi Gary, I think we'll analyze the formation change in a bit more detail shortly, but let's keep on going with the penalties. It was almost like yesterday, a lot of people I speak to felt very confident going into those penalties. Does it feel as though, and it's the first time England have scored 5 out of 5, by the way, at a major tournament in terms of penalties, does it feel now that that fear has completely gone? I mean, look, I don't think the fear ever goes to those lads that are stepping up, but there's no doubt they're in a better place than we have been as a country in the past. You've got to remember we lost on penalties a few years ago in the 2020 final, but the goalkeeper, Donnarumma from Italy, he's a huge man and basically filled the goal, and it was difficult for our lads, and obviously we didn't get over the line in that one. But what you can see is that there is a clear plan of who's going to take them, a clear plan for the goalkeeper on which way he's going to dive. I know that's not new, but everything's very well thought out. One thing I did recognize during my career was this idea that what you need is people on the pitch who have actually been in that position before and take penalties naturally. And that's what we had yesterday. We had 5 lads stepping up who naturally in their lives have been comfortable taking that spot kick. Now, I know it's an added pressure of being in a tournament and playing for England in quarter-final, but the reality of it is, if you've got that repetitive sort of experience that you've had before, it definitely helps. There were times when we played for England where there were lads who were stepping up, who'd probably not taken a penalty probably for 15 years since they were a kid. Brilliant. Every single one of those penalties, Gary, was clinically dispatched. But Ivan Toney's no-look shot, what on earth was he doing? What did you make of that technique? It was just absolutely phenomenal. And he said after the match, he was so matter-of-fact about it, he just said, well, that's just my process. Yeah, I mean, it's what he does. Obviously, we know what he does. We've seen it enough times. He's only missed one penalty, I think, for Brentford. And him coming onto the pitch, you'd normally say Harry Kane going off would be a blow. But the fact that he came on, obviously, it softens that blow because he's such a wonderful penalty taker. It's an amazing sight when you actually freeze frame his eyes just as he's about to kick the ball. And you see him staring forward like that. Not many times I've seen an image like that on a football pitch. I know Eric Cantona, I used to play with at United, used to have a sort of way where he would look at the keeper as he was about to take it, but not in the same way as Ivan Toney does. It's a quite unique style. Yeah, it's mesmerizing really how he does it. Well, that was the good, wasn't it? And it was ultimately a win. But let's have a look at the 120 minutes overall as well. It was another difficult day for England. Gary called on Southgate to make changes. He went with 3 at the back. Did it work? I thought it was better. I did think it was better. Actually, since Gareth took over, the times that we have played 3 at the back, I've actually always liked us playing that way. I've always felt that, for some reason, we've had a better balance and that the actual team suits it. It's a bit more fluid. I felt there was a bit more of a relaxed nature in the football, particularly in the first half. I thought we went back a little bit in the second half, sort of playing around and recycling the balls safely again. I thought in the first half we played some half-decent stuff. Extra time, we just decided, I think, between the two teams, they were very safe, very cautious. They were very tired, probably, as well. And that part of the game was one where we didn't grab the game by the scruff of the neck. There was no tempo in it. Look, what you cannot deny about this team is that they've got tournament know-how. They get to the semi-finals, that little bit of good fortune along the way with the draw. We've played Denmark, Serbia, Slovenia, Slovakia, and Switzerland. If you said that you were going to get those 5 teams in a major tournament, you'd be very, very happy at any of the major teams. And we haven't played at our best. But it's a tournament that seems to be moving that way, whereby Spain have played some really fantastic football. But apart from that, the other teams are being quite, yeah, I suppose in some ways unspectacular. But getting through, I mean, the 4 teams in this, the Dutch, France, who are obviously the tournament favourites, have not been at their best either. I said before the game, I do believe in performance. I genuinely do. I always have done. I think that you can get away with not winning when you're playing at your best. So long. And I've thought that basically that's a good sign for teams that go on and win leagues or go on and win titles or go on and win titles or go on and win trophies. Have to get through difficult matches, whether it be on penalties, whether it be last-minute equalizers. These are moments that you have to get through as a football player to win trophies. But you can't normally fall back upon that and rely upon that all the time. And my gut feeling is, or my feeling has always been, that you'll get caught out eventually if you don't step up your performance level. Now, yesterday was definitely the best we looked in terms of our balance. So it was a progression forward, and now we'll have to step up again against Holland on Wednesday, and we'll have to step up quite a bit because they've got some serious players, Holland. So yeah, I think there's still that element of, are we going to get caught out? Are our performance levels good enough? But then there's now a part of you when you're in a semi-final and you're only 2 games away from what would be absolute utopia, that, canning them go all the way, playing the way they are, being as resilient as they are, and actually having that little bit of tournament know-how and patience and composure that they seem to have, even if things aren't going their way. Gareth Southgate again has some big decisions to make, doesn't he? Not least when it comes to the captain, Harry Kane, who seemed to struggle again yesterday. Just 4 touches in the opposition box. He was dropping deep. Would you stick with him if you were Southgate? Or is it time for a change? Gareth will stick with him. I think that we've called for changes. Many of us have called for changes. I mean, I think changing the shape was quite a significant moment, obviously, before this game. So I don't think you can say that Gareth hasn't made changes. When you have to change your shape, or you do change your shape for an appointment, that's quite a big move. So he was brave enough to do that, and he's done it before. He's not going to drop Harry Kane. Harry Kane is one of his leaders. He's one of the greatest England football players that we've ever had. There's no doubt that he's not been his absolute best in this tournament, but neither of the teams. The service interim isn't great. I'm not quite sure where this Harry Kane dropping deep sort of line comes from. So I know where it comes from. It's been there for 5, 6, 7 years, watching him play football. I mean, I don't see any difference, really, in what he's been doing recently in his football matches for his clubs. So this idea that all of a sudden Harry Kane drops deep, it's partly what I would expect him to do. He's to sort of stay high in between those two centre-backs and then just drop in a little bit to try and sort of draw some of those centre-backs in to allow the runs to go back in behind. So that's what he's been doing for years. But in terms of the actual form, he doesn't look himself. He doesn't look as sharp when the ball's played into him and around the box. He doesn't seem to be able to get. He's touching his shirt off like he ordinarily would do, but he isn't going to be dropped. He's going to be, unless he's injured, obviously, which he went off yesterday. He actually, before that incident where he fell into Gareth Southgate into the actual dugout, I thought I saw him sort of limping. Maybe it was cramp in the middle of the pitch. So I think there was an issue with him. If that stopped him playing or there was a calf muscle injury or something like that that we've not probably heard about, then I'd say obviously that will be a problem. But it would need that for him to be. Paul Pogba has denied he's ended his football career and still has ambitions of playing again after an old interview of the Juventus midfielder went viral in the past few days. Yeah, Pogba clarified his position in an exclusive interview with our colleagues at 1 Hour Sport last night following France's victory over Belgium. Pogba is currently serving a 4-year doping ban which is under appeal and is unable to play until August 2027, by which point he'll be 34. Of course, if you've seen an interview of me saying that I'm retiring and I'm not a footballer, then that's wrong because I'm still here. I'm still positive. There's still a chance to fight this injustice, which is what I believe it is. Let's see. Things are hopefully going to get better. I'm always positive, but let's see. That interview, what I would say is you need to see the whole interview because they only put out a part where I hadn't finished talking yet. Therefore, I have never said I am finished, that Paul Pogba doesn't exist anymore because Pogba is still here. Today I'm here, I am Pogba. You have never seen me say that I'm finished. On that comment, I wasn't talking about football. I was talking about life and things outside of the game, external things. If you want, go back and see the things I said in that video to understand what I really meant. But I still feel like a footballer. I'm still training, and these are now moments where I have to be positive. I'm with my family, spending a lot of time with them, watching my kids grow up. That's always something beautiful, especially when someone in football tells me I can't play or do something I love, but I stay positive. There's a desire to return. It's like when I was a kid trying to be a professional. So I'm training and doing everything to return on the pitch. The latest news is I'm still a Juventus player, so you need to speak to them. I'm still contracted to them. I haven't had the chance to speak to them, the sporting director, nor the coach. I don't know much. There's a bit of silence. Maybe they're waiting for the appeal to see what happens. But the rest, you have to... Let's just bring you a bit of breaking transfer news from Manchester United, who have an interest in the Paris Saint-Germain midfielder Emmanuel Ugarte. One of a number of positions they are looking to strengthen this summer. Ugarte has been with the French champions for just a season, having arrived there from Sporting Lisbon last summer, a Uruguayan international as well. We know a couple of other positions that Manchester United are looking at over the course of this summer, heavily linked with the Netherlands striker Joshua Zirkzee. They've met his release clause at Bologna, so it's now up to him and his representatives to have a conversation with the club. Also looking at central defence too. Following the departure of Raphael Varane, main interest is in the Everton defender Jarrod Brantwaite. They've yet to follow up their initial offer to the England defender to Everton, which was rejected. What about Jonathan David? Well, we spoke about him last week and the interest that Manchester United also had in the Lille forward. Tottenham had made no formal contact with the player, who is into the final year of his contract. Well, two other Premier League clubs interested as well, both Chelsea and West Ham, although neither of those clubs has made formal contact with Lille. Well, Manchester United are closing in on Paris Saint-Germain's Manuel Ugarte and Bologna's Joshua Zirkzee. Michael Bridge has the latest. Positive talks are continuing between Manchester United and the current club Bologna. Of course, maybe a little bit more difficult given that he's on international duty with the Netherlands. A fee of around £34 million is being discussed. Good news though for United fans. Cautious optimism that a deal can get done. Bologna is wanted by a number of big clubs, but United seem to be leading the way there. So more on that as we get it. But the positive talks are continuing. Cautious optimism. I like that phrase. They also want to sign a midfielder from PSG. Is that right? That's right. Manuel Te, a 23-year-old PSG midfielder. A really aggressive midfielder, maybe someone United are potentially missing in that midfield. 23 years of age, full of energy, tenacious. Talks continuing there as well. It's clear that Manchester United are looking to do some business in all positions. Forward line, midfield, and that would be some signing. But they have a price in mind for him, and they have other targets in that position too. Okay, what about Jarrod Brantwaite? Where are we with that? I think this is the first name we talked about when the transfer window was opening on 1 Hour Sports Monday Roundtable with Nolan. We know they like him, but how much do they like him? Because we know something. Everton love him. We talk about what is he worth. To Everton, they're not going to tell us a price, a valuation, because Sean Dyche wants him at his club next season. We know the bid of around £35 million was rejected. Would they maybe consider something higher? We'd have to wait and see, but there has been no development on that so far.